Ed, thank you for coming out tonight on this cold and snowy Iowa winter night. Apparently we were really just supposed to do one of these because we got one canceled because of snow. Then the next one worked out and we had great turnout. We've had around 70 people. And now we got snow again, but we had someone lined up to come and record tonight, so we kind of wanted to stick with it. So we'll have the recording to share with those who are not able to be here. We're not able to be here. So we are going to, this evening, our agenda is to look at a variety of things, kind of all related to kind of a new world that we're beginning to live in because of the passage of ESAs and all that that means. So there have been lots of wax on the side of this old guy's head, that lots of paradigm shifts and rethinking of a whole lot of things. And so we want to talk to you about a bunch of that tonight, just so you're aware of what's going on, what's coming, some rationale for the decisions that have been made, those kinds of things. At the end, there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to ask questions, so we look forward to the dialogue. So thanks again for coming tonight. So first of all, well, actually, let's start with prayer first. Let's join in prayer. Lord God, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing all of us here safely tonight, and we pray that you would get us safely home as well in this snow that we're receiving. Thank you for being our God. Thank you especially for your grace that we find in Jesus. Thank you that we have the opportunity here in this place to share with children 5 days a week that Jesus loves them, Jesus died for them, Jesus has worked out salvation for them. So Father, continue to bless our ministry as we move forward and bless our time together tonight. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right, so first, some changes with preschool that we need to talk about. So because of the growth that we've experienced and space needs and a variety of other things, the first thing that to report is that Trinity will no longer, or at least for sure for next year, will not have a 3-year-old classroom. A couple of reasons for that. First, we kind of learned this year that most parents that we talk to about joining a 3-year-old classroom are really looking for wraparound care. Most families have both parents working these days. So to come to a program that is 2-ish hours, 2 days a week was just a hurdle that most parents couldn't figure out how to make that work. The other thing is because of our growth in other areas, our 3-year-old preschool classroom has been residing for the past 2 years in the front part of our school library. That caused a domino effect because then we're limited to when the rest of the school can use the library, and that causes a domino effect to all of the specials and all the things that we do. So the school ministry team made the decision to say no more 3-year-old preschool for those reasons. Also, we're reducing the number of 4-year-old preschool students from 64 at a maximum to 48 at a maximum. So that means this year we have 4 4-year-old classrooms. Next year we will have 3 3-year-old classrooms. Because the issue, prior years we would have in that 60-ish range of 4-year-olds, and a whole lot of those families looked at, this is a state-funded 4-year-old preschool program, and then they looked at, but now to go to kindergarten, I have tuition to pay. And so many, probably we would get 50 to 60% of our 4-year-olds who would come to kindergarten. That model has now changed because ESAs mean that the financial barrier isn't there for families anymore. So this year, for example, we've got 60 and in preschool, and we need to put 48 in to kindergarten. We surveyed parents. We heard from some that they did not intend to come back, but that still left us with too many. Very difficult position to be in. When we start a relationship with a family, our intent is to continue that relationship as long as the family likes what they're receiving and everything is working well. We like to keep that relationship. I had the difficult task of starting today contacting families who want to be here for kindergarten, telling them that I'm very sorry, but we're not going to be able to accommodate your child. We don't want to have to ever do that again. So that's the reason for shrinking our preschool program offerings so that in the future, we're not, one of our school ministry team members said, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna play Hunger Games to figure this out? How are we gonna come to the decision who gets a spot? Very difficult. So we don't want to be there again in the future. So making that change. Also, class size is another area that the school ministry team has looked at, and I've heard from parents that this is a concern, and we concur. So the school ministry team has decided to transition to smaller class size. That means that classroom caps that have been in place since I've been here, the 16 years that I've been here, will decrease by 2. So what that means is right now in K through 4, our cap currently is 24 students in a classroom. Next year, the cap will be, we will transition to 22, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then 5th through 8th, right now is a cap of 26. That will be cut to 24. That transition part of it is we do have, and Michelle will show you a slide a little bit later that shows you which classes this applies to. We do have some classes that are over these new caps. We're not going to play Hunger Games and send anybody home because of this change. Rather, our goal is that if we have attrition, if there's a family that moves away, that kind of thing, we just won't fill that spot until we get to that point where we are at the new cap. Does that make sense? So if you're in one of those classes that has more than the cap, you don't need to worry. We're not sending anyone away. So the blessings of ESAs. There's a number of things that we're blessed to be able to consider now in ways that we've never been able to consider before. For example, we've had priorities, so we're looking at visioning, setting new priorities, those kinds of things. So we've had goal for a long, long time of increasing the pay for our staff. Our staff is woefully underpaid. Michelle will talk more about that later, so I won't steal her thunder. We're looking at adding, for the sake of quality of our overall program, the addition of a full-time PE and athletic director position. That provides great support to our PE curriculum and our athletics, but it also provides a break during the day for our teachers. We've been short-staffed, so our teachers get little or no break time during a day. Very, very little. So this is one way of providing an additional level of support to our staff, but also adding a higher level of quality to our PE program and our curriculum. Teachers have kind of been teaching their own. Not everybody is an expert in teaching PE, right? So we're looking to get someone who has that expertise and is going to be great at that and build a program and also serve as our athletic director, our head athletic director. Also looking at adding some paras for extra learning support. And future, the list there, sorry, the handles are in the way there, but future things that have been discussed. No promises on any of these, but it's fun to think about what might be possible. A full-time counselor for our kids, adding foreign language, and a variety of other things. We'll talk more about some of that later in the presentation. So the cost to educate, this is where I turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you. For those who don't know, my name is Michelle Warner, and I am the Director of Ministry Support here at Trinity. Meaning I oversee operations, human resources, but finances, and this is one of the fun areas I enjoy working on. And that's cost to educate and tuition setting. About 4 or 5 years ago, the Board of Directors of Trinity, and you'll hear me say some of our leadership names. So let me, before I get into this brief definition, Board of Directors are the ultimate elected leaders from the congregation, and they oversee the operations policies of Trinity Lutheran Church and school. Then you'll hear me talk about the school ministry team. The school ministry team is essentially like the school board, and so they look and oversee the policies of Trinity Lutheran School. And then you'll hear me refer to Leadership Council. And Leadership Council here at Trinity consists of the senior staff, the pastors, the principal, Mr. Meyer. I sit on that board along with several other directors. We meet once a week, and our recommendations along the school ministry team flow up to the Board of Directors for approval. So when you hear me use those terms interchangeably, know that we are all working as one leadership group to better the ministry here at Trinity. So the Board of Directors had set some parameters for setting tuition. They didn't want the school ministry team to say, okay, what's tuition this year? What's the percentage increase? Sounds good. They said, let's look at it methodically and try to determine a way and a basis to move forward. The first parameter they set is that when you calculate the cost to educate, that community members should be paid that cost in tuition. They also said the school tuition should cover the staff and salary benefits of the school. But in time, we would like the tuition to cover all of the school expenses. Now, when that was set, tuition was covering maybe 75% of the staff salaries and benefits, but we've been able to gradually narrow that, and now with the passage of ESAs and some philosophical changes that school ministry team is making, we're able to achieve goals a lot faster. The first step we do then is look at enrollment. What do we think enrollment's going to look like in the future? And as you can see on the left-hand side, we have the current enrollment of 425 students. The right-hand side is what we're projecting next year to be. We are graduating a small 8th grade class of 18, but we project that we'll fill it with kindergarten classes. So right there, we'll gain about 30 students. But then with the elimination of one of the preschool 4-year-old classes and the 3-year-old classes, our net change is only going to be about 8 students, give or take. And then we basically take every class and assume that we're going to keep the same census from one class to the other. We do hope to fill the empty seats, but we can't guarantee that. And then as Mr. Meyer mentioned earlier, the classroom caps that are within, I think, 5, 6 classes there, that will keep those classrooms at that level, but if someone should leave, we won't fill the seat automatically. We'll make sure that we meet the caps. And you may be wondering, kindergarten there has a 48 on there.
Go ahead.
Yep. Because we have so many 4-year-old preschoolers this year, we felt it would be unfair to eliminate 4 more spots this next year because we want to maximize the number of preschoolers. We already have to make the difficult decision of saying some of you can't come back. So we are keeping kindergarten at 48 for 1 more year, but then next year we will right size that down to the cap of 44. So we have 433 kids that we're projecting to be enrolled here, grades pre-K4 all the way up through 8th grade. And we use that to start the process. Then we have to look at our costs. And by and large, the largest cost is staffing. And as Mr. Meyer mentioned, our salaries are low. We follow what's called the district, Iowa District East, which is all of the Lutheran schools within the eastern side of Iowa. they have salary guidelines, which are approved. Whoops, Mr. Salta. There we go. They're approved every 3 years, and they provide a way for schools to say you should be paying your teachers a certain level, give them a year of service increment, and that's how you calculate the salaries. Our base has never been equal to their base. We've tried, but because of our circumstances, we were probably at 80% of the base. In the past 2 years, we've been fortunate to be able to give our base increase 4%. They increase at 2%, so we are gradually narrowing the gap. So our goal, though, is to be at 100% of district level, and within a few years, we hope to achieve that. We also provide benefits for all of our full-time workers. Health benefits for those who work over 30, health and retirement disability for those workers, also those who work over 20 hours. So that's all included in that cost per student. We also look at all of the school expenses, from curriculum, textbooks, workbooks, yearbooks, technology, all of the supplies. That's all factored into the cost to educate. And then finally, we look at overhead. What expenses on the campus are attributed to the school. And we usually use a 60%, so 60% of the utilities, 60% of the insurance, of the repair bills, things like that. It provides a good starting point. So putting all of those numbers together, we are able to estimate what we think the costs will be. So staffing expenses, like I mentioned before, we included a 4% increase in base and included all of the benefits. Our school expenses, we took this year's current approved budget and added a slight cost increase because we know inflation's out there. Facilities overhead and materials fees, the same type of percentage. So even though these aren't set in stone, it provides us a good basis of how to calculate the cost to educate. As many of you know, we've been doing renovations throughout the church and also the school. We are taking on a mortgage to cover the costs of that. So a portion of that is also attributed to the school. And so that's about 40% of the actual loan costs. That's about how much the renovations were for the school portion. So adding all of those together, our estimated cost to educate is $2.763 million. That does not include any new initiatives or any new priority set, but it gives us that first look of what the cost per student would be. I mentioned 433 students, but not all of those are full-time students. We're estimating 16 half-day students. So we did a full-time equivalency. So looking at 403 full-time equivalent students and breaking that out, cost to educate would be $6,800. But as Bill mentioned, the ESAs are giving us opportunity to look beyond and to look further. So Leadership Council and School Ministry team asked, what priorities do we have for the upcoming school year? For staffing, for educational growth, for facility needs. Our goal is to be excellent, and what do we need in these areas to make Trinity excellent? So Leadership Council as well as School Ministry team came up with these priorities. And Mr. Meyer mentioned the first two already, the importance of having that physical education PE teacher and the importance of having a para-educator. And more specifically in the resource room, targeting and working with children who are able and need that little extra support, working with Mrs. Meyer during the day and with the Title I teacher. Leadership Council also would challenges us to say, is 4% increase in base enough? Let's look at 5%. So let's increase that base one more percentage so we can try to narrow that gap between our base and the district base. Facility improvements and deferred maintenance fund they walk hand in hand. Yes, we have a lot of improvements going on in this campus right now, but there's more. And our Leadership Council today took a look with our Director of Properties, and he came up with a laundry list of, well, did you think about this and this and this and this? We have more improvements to do on the campus. And we want to set up a deferred maintenance fund so that when we have to replace what's new now in 5 or 10 or 15 years, we have the money to do that. That way we want to budget it every year, keep it in a pot, and then have it available when we need it. So those 5 priorities, along with the cost that basis cost to educate, gives us what we're proposing for tuition. But before we get to that, I want to take a step back and talk about our commitment to families who do not qualify for ESAs. We knew when the bill passed last year that it was going to be a short 2 years before everyone would be fully covered. But we want to make sure that we treat those who aren't covered by ESAs equitably and as fairly as possible. So next year, we will provide a grant to the families who do not qualify for ESAs, and actually for the students who don't qualify for ESAs, because we know that some will have like a kindergarten who qualifies, but an older child who might not. But your tuition will be what you paid this year in tuition. We'll get through a couple of examples later on in the presentation, but we want you to know that school ministry team made this a firm commitment, and Leadership Council and Board of Directors unanimously approved this. That, again, that what you paid in 23-24, prior to STO, prior to Trinity Lutheran Financial Assistance, but that would be what you pay for next year. And then in the 25-26 school year, everyone will qualify for the ESAs. So our cost to educate, as mentioned before, $2.7 million. The sum of the priorities is almost $200,000. So our proposed cost to educate is $2.9 million. Divided by those 403 full-time equivalent students is 7,300. That was the tuition proposal proposed to Board of Directors, and that's what is approved for next year. Also to note, because of the ESAs, we are eliminating the discounts for students who qualify for the ESAs. So $7,300 is the tuition rate. Preschool tuition for the 4-year-old half-day program, it's still paid for by the statewide voluntary funds, and those who are in all-day will pay $36.50, which is half of what a K-8 tuition will be. And then if a preschool student is coming from Illinois, they would pay the full rate, similar to a K-8 student. The happy news about this is that this year's ESA is $7,600, $7,635. We anticipate that going up, and this tuition is still under that at the ESA amount, so that there should be, your full tuition next year should be covered by your ESAs. So going back to the families that do not qualify for ESAs next year, for example, if you had a Trinity family who had 2 children and they paid $8,850 this year, that was the rate of tuition. Next year's tuition would be $7,300, but we would provide grants of $5,750 so that their out-of-pocket costs would remain $8,850, same as this year. The community member that has 3 students would pay tuition of $14,210, again, prior to any tuition assistance. Next year's tuition is $21,900, $7,300 times 3, but they would receive grants of $7,690 so that their family would pay $14,210, same as this year. And again, this is for families who don't qualify for ESAs. I think later on in the presentation we talked a little bit about the process for next year. We'll get into what the income levels and some of the grant information at that time. But in summary, we wanted to show how we think the tuition revenue centers and then how our total tuition revenue stacks up against the expenses. Yes, there is a shortfall, but this is where we are supported by the faithful members of Trinity Lutheran Church. They have always been supportive of the school for the past 154 years and will continue to do so. They're able to provide those grants to our non-ESA families so that, again, their tuition is the same as this year. They're not going to see an increase. So we are very grateful for the members and their support. I'm going to turn this back to Bill now, and I think we're going to popcorn this a little bit. He has some, I've got some, but we'll talk about what's also is moving forward.
Make sure you tell me when to stop when it's your turn, because I'll forget. I'll just keep charging. All right. So some other initiatives, some other things that have been going on. We applied for and received a grant. Our governor last year announced grants for school safety, $50,000 per building. We applied and received that grant, and the main things that we are doing with those dollars, we've already installed new door locks on all of the classrooms, which are much more compliant with what emergency management and those kinds of folks want them to be, so much safer. So we're excited about that. We are adding some additional cameras, especially outdoors. I have seen firsthand that those are a deterrent. I've watched those outside cameras, and I saw once at, I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 young men are walking up to our north door. They looked up, saw the camera, and they turned around and walked the other way. So cameras don't solve everything, but the more layers of security we can have, the better. And lastly, the last piece that we're going to be adding, we have a training on this next week. We're adding a visitor management system called Raptor, which when someone comes in, we are able to take a driver's license, scan that driver's license. The software will take the photo from that person's driver's license, and we'll be able to print a name tag for that person so that they go into the building. If you don't see somebody with, if staff knows, if they don't see somebody with a picture ID on their name tag, they haven't checked in properly. So that gives us one layer. Raptor also does some other things for us. It will interface with our student information system so that if we ever would have an emergency and had to vacate this building, it will help us with the reunification process. The other thing that it has built into it is a pretty nifty notification system that works kind of like an Amber Alert, if you're familiar with those on your phone. So anybody who sees a dangerous situation within this building can activate that alert that will go to everybody in the building's cell phone. It will go to their computers. So everybody gets instant notification that there's something going on in the building, go into lockdown, all those kinds of things. I mean, we'll follow our other protocols as well, but Raptor is going to be a blessing in terms of providing safety. After 42 years of working in schools, it just breaks my heart, honestly, that we have to think about this stuff for children. It kills me. My heart goes out to the community in Perry that has just recently gone through this and lost their principal, who sacrificed his own life for the safety of children. So it's a sad topic that we have to talk about, but thanks be to God that we got this grant, and we will continue to do all that we can to keep kids safe here in this place. We've also had, as Michelle alluded to, our Let's Go project. Much of that has had a great impact on our school. The classrooms in our North Wing have all new cabinetry, which was very much needed. Storage in those rooms was bad, let's just say it that way. They now have probably 4 times the storage that they had prior. As you know, the windows in the hallways got covered over, so the cabinets now can go all the way up without blocking those windows. The gym is going to get a facelift. We've also got new windows that will come to that North Wing, outside windows. Those will be installed over spring break. So we're excited about that, as well as there are updates going on in our church. It looks like we will be back in our church sanctuary in mid-February. That's going to be a blessing because we've had, chapel is in here. Yesterday we had to serve lunch here because we had boiler issues and we had no heat in the cafeteria. You know, so it's been quite an experience not having access for school for our church. So, you know, you may think, well, that's the church, this is the school. Oh my goodness, the school relies on that facility for many, many things. So it's a domino effect. So we're grateful for all of that. And athletics. Because of changes in enrollment and other things, we are beginning to study alternatives. And if you have really young kids, you probably don't care at this point, but someday you will. So we're reviewing our current situation and investigating long-term options. And I'll just give you a little bit of the history that kind of got this started. Because of our growth in numbers, we kind of realized this year when we started volleyball for 7th and 8th graders, we had way more girls out for volleyball than it made any sense to have on a team. So in the first time in my tenure here, we had to cut girls from volleyball that didn't get to play at all. The other concern, so that's a concern, and that concern is only going to grow because we have 2 single tracks in middle school this year. Next year, one of those will be double, and the following year, the other one will be double. So we'll have many more kids. This is going to be an ongoing problem. So we want kids to have good quality experiences in athletics. The other thing is that for athletics, it's a huge commitment on the part of families to travel to all of the games because most of our games are our opponents are Iowa District East schools. None of them are super close to us. So it's drives to Williamsburg and drives to Newhall and sometimes drives all the way to Cedar Bluffs. So it's a huge commitment on the part of our families to make all of that work. So we're looking at alternatives, no decisions made, but our school ministry team is going to be talking about this. We also don't want to do anything that is going to harm our Lutheran identity and our intermixing with the other Lutheran schools. So we're not saying we're going to give that up. It's maybe just time to look at some other alternatives that make this all easier. So just be watching for more information as that develops. We may have another forum to talk about that at some point in the future. Website. Is it live? Okay, so if you go to our website link, you will see something very, very different. If you've ever looked at our website, I'm just going to say it was really bad. Information went up there and it stayed the same for 2 or 3 years, very much out of date, and not a lot of information that's helpful to you. So the new site is up and running. If you go to it and you find glitches, please let us know. We've been working, a year or so at getting all of the information in. I'll just give you a quick look. So this is like the welcome page that you will come to. You see the variety of things. There's the about drop down, information about our church, academics in our school, admissions, extended care, preschool, extracurricular parent resources, and calendar. So lots of things for you to find there. It will be a much more user-friendly experience, and you should be able to find the stuff that you need when you need it. So we're excited about that. This is just an example of one of the other pages of things that will be available to you. Parent resources, you can connect directly to the Fax Family Portal. Lunch menus will be there, and then there'll be like a news scroll kind of thing down at the bottom. So lots and lots of information. We're pretty excited about all of that. I'm going to turn it back to Michelle. I remember this.
All right, we'll wrap up with some ESA information both this year and next year. So this year, it's been a learning curve for us with the whole ESA world. We give thanks for everyone who came out in June to learn about how to sign up for ESAs. We thank every parent for naming us appropriately in August for the first semester. Now it's time to do it for second semester. And I know there's a process, but the good news is almost everyone who has an ESA has completed the process. But if you are sitting there thinking, did I? I'm not sure if I did. Please contact Tina. Tina's our fax administrator and the person who works with Odyssey, and she can let you know if there is still a step to do, because this has to be done by the end of the month. And if it's not done by the end of the month, you risk losing your ESA dollars for second semester, and then tuition will be on you. And again, it's only a handful of families. I'm probably speaking to the choir here, so thank you if you've already done that. We want to make sure, though, that it is done. I skipped the first one, though. For those of you that have been billed for athletic charges, PE uniforms, or band, we are having some problems with Odyssey and the marketplace. Because it's labeled a marketplace, Odyssey thinks we should charge sales tax. We've told them, no, we're a school, we're not supposed to charge sales tax. But somehow the communication just doesn't, they don't get it. And Tina has been working with them, sending various emails. Then Odyssey says, oh no, we have to talk to the Department of Ed. And the Department of Ed says, nope, you have to talk to Odyssey, and we can't get an answer. So if you were billed for one of those areas or all three of them, just sit tight and be patient. You're not gonna be charged a late fee if we don't get the money until March. We wanna make sure it's done right. And because this is the first year of ESAs, and as you've heard probably in the forums that we had last summer and last fall, it's like putting the pieces on the plane after it's taken off. This is one of those examples. They were hurrying to get it done because they knew they had to get it done, but now we've got glitches. So that being said, there have been a few bumps in the road, but it isn't as bad as what it could have been. But looking forward to 24-25, reiterating who's eligible for this, all incoming kindergarten students. So anyone who's in preschool, 4-year-old preschool right now, you're eligible for that kindergarten ESA. All students who are transferring from a public school. So if your friends or family are here in the area in a public school right now and are thinking about Trinity, this would be the time because they would be covered. And then the income guideline has changed. So this current year, it was 300% of the federal poverty level. So for example, 2023 federal poverty level for a family of 4 was $30,000. Next year, it's 400%, and the federal poverty levels have just been released. The family of 4 FPL is $31,200. So that means your income in 2023 would be $124,800 or less to qualify for that ESA. But if you received an ESA in 23-24, regardless of your income level, you qualify for 24-25. So that's another eligibility marker there. So we're excited about that and that how the increase not only in the 400% but also in the FPL. We have heard the applications are available in April, so they've bumped and moved that up. We don't know that for sure. Because tax time is in April and because ESAs look directly at your taxes, we are recommending to everybody make sure you get your taxes done early so that you are able to apply for the ESAs if they are available as early as April. All qualifying families need to apply. So if you receive the ESA this year, you still have to fill out the applications and still go through those multiple steps of applying, selecting the school, approving the tuition, all of that. Very much the same. Don't think that once you've applied in 23-24 that you're done, because you're not. Every year it's an application. And again, the tax return. Please get your taxes done so that you can complete that ESA when it becomes live. We have heard through the Iowa Association of Christian Schools, the group that Trinity belongs to, as well as many other Lutheran and Christian schools. They provide us a lot of good information, and then they have walked along us through this ESA process. But just a couple of weeks ago, they recommended to us to alert our families, make sure that you complete your taxes, and if you think you might qualify, to definitely apply for the ESA. Iowa changed its tax form, and ESAs are going to now look at line 4. I'm not sure what line they looked at last time, but line 4 is going to be the line that they look at for your income guidelines. And some of the deductions and exemptions have changed in the state of Iowa from last year to this year, which we have heard is for the better. So again, it's one of those, talk to your tax professional, make sure you get your taxes done, because we don't want anyone to miss out just because they think they might not qualify. It is a blessing to try, and the applications are free and very painless, we've heard. At the last forum, someone asked us if we would have forums for parents, which I think is a good idea. We're not that far in the planning stage, but we will keep that in the back of our mind come spring. So if the demand is there, and we had kiosks ready so parents could apply right on the spot. So it is an opportunity that we are seriously considering at that time. So that's our presentation, Cost to Educate, amongst other things. We'll open it up for questions now, for anything, and Mr. Meyer can come and help answer questions as well.
Hit us with your best shot. What you got? ma'am.
What is going to happen with the, usually STO stuff for families that don't qualify?
That's a great question.
You might want to repeat the question. For the
Yeah,
mic.
so what the question was, what is going to happen with, what's the role of STO, which, if you're new around here, that's a program that Iowa has had in place for many, many years. It gets funded through tax credits given to the donor, but then those dollars become available based on need. Michelle and I attended a meeting for the leaders of all of the various STOs around the state. So we belong to the Iowa Lutheran STO, but each Catholic diocese has its own. I think there are a total of 13 organizations around the state. And what was shared was really helpful to me. I hope it's helpful to you as well. Is when the people who really pushed for ESAs to happen, in their mind, they really saw STO and ESA walking hand in hand. The STO was always intended, I mean, eventually, ESA is for everybody, right? I mean, so if you want to go to a Christian school or a non-public school, you qualify for an ESA. Income isn't going to matter. It does right now, but eventually that's not going to be the case. So the hand-in-hand part is that the idea was that if everybody qualifies for ESA, folks who especially have a low income still would have STO as an option. So right now, for this upcoming year, the threshold is 400% of the federal poverty rate. So if that applies to you, please apply for STO. Can't say how much support is going to be there because there's a lot of misunderstanding around the state right now. I haven't seen the final total of what was actually brought in, but if we maxed that out for Iowa Lutheran schools, it's close to, if we got all the donations we needed, it would be close to $1 million that we have to give away. I know it won't be that much, but if low income, if you're below that 400%, please apply for STO. As well as if you're getting ESA, they should walk hand in hand. Does that make sense? Kind of? I don't know a better way to explain it.
And if I could, and that's for the STO question, but we also offer Trinity Lutheran tuition assistance. So families that are above the 400% that won't qualify for ESAs or won't qualify for STOs, we still have financial assistance through our Trinity tuition assistance. There's an application we ask families to fill out, but we have assistance for those families, that have to pay next year, but for whatever reason cannot pay. Even though we've applied, we're able to grant you some grants, we may be able to provide some additional assistance through our own financial assistance.
Let me give an example. So if a low-income family, and I don't mean that to sound disparaging to anybody, but if someone who is below that 400% and they're really struggling to make ends meet, already have the STO, so the idea is that's the reason behind this marketplace. So if a portion of your tuition is covered by the STO, you have then less money that's going to come from your ESA, and you would be able to use those dollars in the marketplace to purchase things that you need related to your child's education that you might not be able to do otherwise. Does that make sense? So that's the hand-in-hand part. So for example, eventually when the marketplace is all working the way it's supposed to, we've been told, for example, if a family needed educational testing, psychological testing, and they wanted to go to Iowa City to get that done, you've got the dollars in your ESA to make that happen. It can be used, if you remember the presentations last year, if a low-income family really needs a computer for their child to use at home for the purpose of their education, go to the marketplace, you can take care of that. Does that make sense? So that's how they walk hand in hand. That's how it's intended for them to walk hand in hand. Good question. Anything else?
We have a soon-to-be 4-year-old wanting to enter preschool next year. So with the class sizes reducing, I know a survey was sent out to say, hey, you might have a kid that's getting to this age, do you plan to enroll them, yes or no, right? Do you have an idea of how many families do have 4-year-olds wanting to enter preschool, and is that number higher than 48?
It is not. From what I understand, talking to Jennifer, our admissions counselor, right now we have interest from families that equals about 22.
Cool. And then.
And do you have children enrolled here now? Yeah. So you'll be a first priority.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure I'm remembering correctly. So my daughter is in kindergarten, so she got the blessing of being the very first fully funded
Yeah.
student regardless of income. She gets to keep her status
Yes.
next year.
Once you're
regardless
in,
of
you're
income.
always in. Yep. So the income part will not matter. I mean, so if you were over 400% in income, doesn't matter. If you got STO this year,
ESA.
ESA, sorry. Oh, I'm getting my acronyms mixed up.
One last question.
Yeah.
So like she's one that has a little bit of a credit for ESA account, and she's not in athletics, she's in kindergarten. Does that carry over until she graduates, or if it's not spent, is it gone?
It's called an education savings account, just like a health savings account. It stays in that account. Any amount that you don't use stays in the account until such time you're no longer enrolled in a non-public school. Yeah. So if your child is gonna go all the way through high school in Christian schools, any amount that is there carries over. As soon as she graduates from high school, whatever is left goes back to the state of Iowa. It doesn't belong to you. It's just there as a way for you to pay your education bills. It's another method of payment in your pocket. Other questions? Yes?
Is there any way you guys could go back over the five priorities for next year regarding why you were up? Yes, right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm someone, I have a daughter, this is our first daughter or child going to school. So we're in the 4-year-old all day program, and if you're looking I think it would be lovely to have an ESA forum for those of us that are going to continue on.
Okay.
Kindergarten, 'cause I think it would be super helpful.
Yeah.
A lot of us.
Very good, and that's the feedback we received from the first one too. So once we get some dates firmed up from the state, we will schedule some of those forums too. Thank you.
And it's pretty painless. I mean, it's just sitting down with the computer and walking through the steps. And first time through, it's a little daunting, but it goes pretty smoothly. They've made it pretty easy, honestly.
I think a lot of us in the country, and I'm sorry to speak on this, for my group of parents that I'm friends with, I think the whole picture is confusing to us. So although we understand that the kindergartners will be fully covered, we don't know what long-term looks like. The website is, if you're trying to navigate it on your own, it's a little difficult to understand. So I think just a long-term, big picture kind of form would be helpful.
Sure.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
So is kindergarten full for enrollment? It's like we're outside, people can come in this year, so is that not a possibility at the moment?
Well, we just sent invitations to families that have 4-year-olds this year, encouraging them that now is the time to enroll. They have a 2-week window to get that complete.
This will be for kindergarten.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So this year's 4-year-olds going into kindergarten next year, they just got their invitation to enroll. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the reality is, because of this ESA change, the reality is we could have triple tracked our kindergarten this year, and we could easily triple track it next year. And wouldn't that be great? But if we start that, we need to build a new classroom, one every year for the next 9 years. And that's multi-million dollar project. So kind of back to the beginning, we're really looking at right-sizing our ministry and really looking at what can we fit well on this current footprint. So, and we've got a group that's looking at 2 years from now when we graduate this year's 6th graders as a single track, we're going to need another classroom. Right now, we don't have a super good answer to that question, but there's a group studying that and looking at alternatives, and wow, it's been really fun having those conversations about ways we can use this existing footprint and reimagining some things without building on a whole new wing. So we're thinking about a lot of things. Anything else? Well, then I'm just going to put in one last plug and I guess a prayer request. When it comes to teachers, pretty much what I read pretty much everywhere in the nation right now is struggling to find quality teachers who will stick around. And we are confronted with needing to fill a number of positions for this upcoming school year. So if you know someone that is currently a teacher, that is a Christian, who would be happy and comfortable teaching in a Christ-centered environment, please have them give me a call. Because right now, normally we get our teachers from our Lutheran university system, but the number of graduates coming out is very, very low. So it's very difficult to meet that standard that we have had for many, many years. So if you know someone, encourage them that you could be teaching in a Christ-centered environment if that's where your heart is. I would love to talk with them. All right, so thank you so much for coming tonight. If you think of questions, or if there's something you want to talk to Michelle or I about personally, we'll hang around for a little bit, and we're happy to answer those questions. Thank you so much for coming out on a snowy, snowy night.